with a serious note which Hortense was never to forget. "How extraordinary!" she said. "Extraordinary indeed," said he, "for the works are exceedingly simple and would hardly keep going for a week. And do you see nothing out of the common?" "No, nothing. Or, at least—" He stooped, and, from the back of the case, drew a metal tube which was concealed by the weights. Holding it up to the light: "A telescope!" he said, thoughtfully. "Why did they hide it? And they left it drawn out to its full length. That's odd. What does it mean?" The clock, as is sometimes usual, began to strike a second time, sounding 8 strokes. Rénine closed the case and continued his inspection without putting his telescope down. A wide arc led from the drawing-room to a smaller apartment, a sort of smoking-room. This also was furnished, but contained a glass case for guns, of which the rack was empty. Hanging on a panel near by was a calendar with the date of the 5th of September. "Oh!" cried Hortense, in astonishment. "The same date as to-day! They tore off the leaves until the 5th of September, and this is the anniversary. What an astonishing coincidence!" "Astonishing?" he echoed. "It's the anniversary of their departure, 20 years ago, to-day." "You must admit," she said, "that all this is incomprehensible." "Yes, of course. But all the same—" "Perhaps not. Have you any idea?" He waited a few seconds before replying. "What puzzles me is this telescope hidden, dropped in that corner at the last moment. I wonder what it was used for. From the ground-floor windows you see nothing but the trees in the garden. And the same, I expect, from all the windows. We are in a valley, without the least open horizon. To use the telescope, one would have to go up to the top of the house. Shall we go up?" She did not hesitate. The mystery surrounding the whole adventure excited her curiosity so keenly that she could think of nothing but accompanying Rénine and assisting him in his investigations. They went upstairs accordingly, and, on the second floor, came to a landing where they found the spiral staircase leading to the belvedere. At the top of this was a platform in the open air, but surrounded by a parapet over 6 feet high. "There must have been battlements which have been filled in since," observed Prince Rénine. "Look here, there were loopholes at one time. They may have been blocked." "In any case," she said, "the telescope was of no use up here either, and we may as well go down again." "I don't agree," he said. "Logic tells us that there must have been some gap through which the country could be seen, and this was the spot where the telescope was used." He hoisted himself by his wrists to the top of the parapet, and then saw that this point of vantage commanded the whole of the valley, including the park, with its tall trees marking the horizon, and, beyond the depression in a wood surmounting a hill, at a distance of some 700 or 800 yards, stood another tower, squat and in ruins, covered with ivy from top to bottom. Rénine resumed his inspection. He seemed to consider that the key to the problem lay in the use to which the telescope was put, and that the problem would be solved if only they could discover this use. He studied the loopholes one after the other. One of them, or rather the place which it had occupied, attracted his attention above the rest. In the middle of the layer of plaster which had served to block it, there was a hollow filled with earth in which plants had grown. He pulled out the plants and removed the earth, thus clearing the mouth of a hole some 5 inches in diameter, which completely penetrated the wall. On bending forward, Rénine perceived that this deep and narrow opening inevitably carried the eye above the dense tops of the trees and through the depression in the hill to the ivy-clad tower. At the bottom of this channel, in a sort of groove which ran through it like a gutter, the telescope fitted so exactly that it was quite impossible to shift it, however little, either to the right or to the left. Rénine, after wiping the outside of the lenses, while taking care not to disturb the lie of the instrument by a hair's breadth, put his eye to the small end. He remained for 30 or 40 seconds, gazing attentively and silently. Then he drew himself up and said, in a husky voice: "It's terrible. It's really terrible." "What is?" she asked anxiously. "Look." She bent down, but the image was not clear to her, and the telescope had to be focused to suit her sight. The next moment she shuddered and said: "It's 2 scarecrows, isn't it, both stuck up on the top? But why?" "Look again," he said. Look more carefully, under the heads, the faces." "Oh!" she cried, turning faint with horror. "How awful!" The field of the telescope, like the circular picture shown by a magic lantern, presented this spectacle: the platform of a broken tower, the walls of which were higher in the more distant part and formed as it were a backdrop, over which surged waves of ivy. In front, amid a cluster of bushes, were two human beings, a man and a woman, leaning back against a heap of fallen stones. But the words man and woman could hardly be applied to these two forms, these two sinister puppets, which, it is true, wore clothes and hats, or rather shreds of clothes and remnants of hats, but had lost their eyes, their cheeks, their chins, every particle of flesh, until they were, actually and positively, nothing more than two skeletons. "Two skeletons!" stammered Hortense. "Two skeletons with clothes on! Who carried them up there?" "Nobody. But still—" "That man and that woman must have died at the top of the tower, years and years ago, and their flesh rotted under their clothes, and the ravens ate them." "But it's hideous, hideous!" cried Hortense, pale as death, her face drawn with horror. Chapter 2.